It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back hometown commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB. Always be brewing. And always, the deck list is going to be down in the description for you below as well. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking down the links down in the description. Our Discord is open. Mikey and I are in there chatting, as well as we have new Millsy Brews merch that I'll be showing off here for the end of the year. Take a look at that. I'd love it if you could check it out. But today we're talking about Lord of the Nazgul, a 5-mana Dimir Wraith Noble flying. Say Wraiths you control have protection from your ring bearers. And then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to make a 3/3 Wraith token with Menace. Then if you control 9 or more Wraiths, Wraiths you control have base power toughness 9/9 until end of turn. I don't know what possessed me to go back to Lord of the Nazgul and update it, but I always genuinely liked this deck. I love the idea of being able to cast spells to make Wraith, especially with how many cheap, impactful spells in these two colors there are. Not only that, but we get to play Nazgul, a Wraith that just makes value with itself and it buffs all these other wraiths that you're making. I think it's just spell slinging to the max. You have access to all the things you want to have access to. We'll talk about ways we can blink and copy Nazgul to get even more value. And I think we're just going to end up hitting pretty hard as our opponents aren't going to be able to deal with the just stampede of wraiths that we have. We're only playing 10, I'd say, real creatures in the deck. 9 Nazgul, because we're allowed to play 9. And then Witch King of Angmar. It says whenever one more creatures we control deal combat, whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to us, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt combat damage to you this turn, and the ring tempts you, and you can pitch a card to give it indestructible and tap it. But the point is, it's not a bad wraith on its own, especially with flying. It does help us with a little bit of the. It does help us a little bit with people damaging us, but it's also there's just another wraith for the purposes of Nazgul's Lord of the Nazgul's ability to get us to 9. But I think the big part where this deck's going to shine is blinking or copying Nazgul to get its ability. I think we should probably read Nazgul if you've never read Nazgul so that you understand what I'm talking about. When it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. We'll talk about the ring tempting us later. Whenever the ring tempts you, you put a counter on each wraith you control. So that's what we really care about, is putting counters on each wraith we control. So there's a world where we could cast a spell to blink Nazgul, make the wraith, the Nazgul blinks, comes back in on ETB, the ring tempts us, all of our wraiths get a counter, and you can start to see why this ability is going to stack and become really useful. So most of the creatures in our deck are just things that can copy another creature. Glasspool Mimic, Mockingbird both can copy Nazgul. Auton Soldier is kind of a mixed bag, because we can either choose to copy Lord of the Nazgul, or we can use it to copy Nazgul. But it says that you have it come in as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary, it's an artifact, and has Myriad. Myriad is a killer ability, especially for something like Nazgul, because when you attack, you make copies of it attacking each other player, immediately making more Nazgul triggers. Now, as long as Nazgul isn't legendary with that ring tempting us, we can make as many of them as we want, and we're just going to continue to spread counters around our creatures. Sakashima and Spark Doubler are both ways to make non-legendary copies of Lord of the Nazgul if we want to, but I think both are still very good to copy the Nazgul. What I like about Sakashima the Imposter is we can pay 4 to get it back to our hand and play it again, which is pretty nice. Irenicus' Val Duplication can make a copy of a creature we control, except it's a token, except it has flying and isn't legendary, so we can make a copy of Lord of the Nazgul, or we can, again, just do Nazgul again. Rider Replication can make up to 5 copies of something for 9 mana, or just 1 for 4. Stolen Identity is a fun spell in a deck like this, so whenever you can create a token that's a copy of a target creature or artifact, and it has Cipher, so you may exile the spell encoded on a creature you control. Whenever that creature deals damage to a player, its controller may cast a copy of the encoded card without playing its mana cost, meaning we can just play Stolen Identity again. And we get to cast the copy for free, so Lord of the Nazgul will go off. And the Nanogene conversion may look odd to some people, but I think this is a really fun spell. So it says you choose a creature you control. Each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until in a turn, except it isn't legendary. My thought on Nanogene conversion is let's say I have 3 or 4 Wraith tokens out, and I have a Lord of the Nazgul. I can Nanogene conversion to make them all into a Lord of Nazgul, copy one, cast one spell, I get 5 wraiths, and now I've hit that 9 threshold, and now they're all. You could see where some of this play can come with that to take advantage, right, of that situation. Blur, planar incision are both ways to blink a creature. Again, mostly used for Nazgul there. C double can make a copy of a token, or make a token that's a copy of a creature, or you could copy a spell. There's some different ways you can use that one, but the interesting thing about C double is really just to make the copy of a Nazgul. So that's the make copy, get a Nazgul, because we have 9 of them. We should see it every game. Make a copy of it, hit the ground running, just make our wraiths even harder and harder to deal with. I mean, you think that Lord of the Nazgul making them 9/9s is going to be hard enough, but once you get a couple counters on them with Nazgul, it's just going to get better. Then we get into the spells. And again, the goal here is keep our spells low to the ground, cheap to cast, so we can just get a ton of wraiths. The whole point is to get to 9 wraiths, so we want to get it as cheap as we can. Ponder, Preordain, classic mono blue draw spells, dig through our deck even more, gets more value. Enter the Enigma can make a creature unblockable this turn and draw a card. I like the idea of turning some of our wraiths into threats, even Lord of the Nazgul itself, as these Nazguls are coming in and putting counters on Lord of the Nazgul. It could become a commander damage threat. And making unblockable seems a great way to do it. Same thing with something like Slip Through Space. Serum Vision's another perfect mono blue draw spell. Dig for some things. Ring Sight's a really fun one. The ring tempts you, and you search your library for a card that shares a color with a legendary creature you control, reveal it, put it here in the shuffle. The whole point here, I think, a lot of times is going to be to get a Nazgul. But if you already have too many Nazguls, maybe it's to go get something that can blink them or do that. But the point is, if you have Lord of the Nazgul out, Ringsight can get anything that has a color in your deck. If Lord of the Nazgul isn't out, well, then you pick one of your creatures with the ring tempting, make it legendary, and then you can go get something of your choice. My only warning that I'm going to give now with the ring tempted to you is you do not want to give a Nazgul the ring, because then you can't have Molten on the battlefield. So just make sure you're very careful about what you choose to do with that. Now, if you can't refuse for some counterplay, consider in Frantic Search, again, draw, churn through the deck, get Wraiths as we're churning through our deck and getting more things. Leap and Shadow Rift, a way to potentially give something unblockable. Again, maybe Lord of the Nazgul as we're growing it. Ripples of Potential. It says proliferate, then choose any number of permanents you control. I had a counter put on this way. Those permanents phase out. This is mainly used to protect the Wraiths, because inevitably someone's going to try to wipe our board. And the reason I like the phase out is our tokens won't go away like we would if we blink them. And once one Nazgul comes down, every Wraith on a battlefield is going to get at least one counter. So we're going to potentially have a way to protect, hopefully, every Wraith that exists, right, on our board. I think the last thing to think about when we're looking at this is, how do we get in a little bit easier? I think the Wraiths are going to be hard enough to deal with on their own, but I mean, chump blocking is going to be a problem, right? It's going to be pretty easy for our opponents to just throw things in front of the 9/9s that don't have trample, and we're not really in the colors for that. But we are in the colors for being sneaky. Predator's Hour can give all of our creatures trample, and whenever we hit somebody, we get to steal off the top of their deck. Cover of Darkness, giving them fear, so they can only be blocked by artifact creatures or black creatures, is a huge deal, and is going to allow us to maybe even go at somebody unblockable. And then Rogue Class lets you do something very similar to Predator's Hour, getting to exile and steal the top card of somebody's library to play later with it. But the level 2 gives them Menace, and I think Menace is important because it's going to make them a teeny bit harder to block, right, and allow for more fun situations of getting damage through. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. Even though we covered Lord of the Nazgul way back in our Lord of the Rings content, I think every deck has something we can learn at testing. And I think there's 2 things I'd want to see here. One, am I drawing enough? Do we need these Binding of Thassa's reconnaissance mission, style abilities to draw some more as our Wraiths are hitting? And number 2, do we need to be more offensive with something like Raise the Palisade to just bounce all creatures that aren't Wraiths? Or, do the Sweaty Blue thing and take extra turns, or things like that. I think it's a lot of ways to approach that style of the game. But I think it comes down with seeing, how does the deck do on its own? There's also more mono blue draw, right? There's more ways to draw cards. It's not like it's just Ponder and Preordain. We could add things like Deadly Dispute and Fanatical Offering and those Nasty End and those black spells that you sack a creature to draw too. There's so many ways to look at that. I think it just comes to, are we getting enough? And if we aren't, that's when we fix that. Let's get into our first playtest, keeping a 4-lander with Talisman, Refute, and Suspended Silence. Just an interesting card. Destroy a creature an opponent controls, that player loses 3 life, and then you get to suspend it with 3 counters on it. Just an interesting card. Remember that you get to cast it every time it comes back off of suspend. So here on turn 2, we get the Talisman down. Again, the goal, I think, is to get... That's right, Lord of Nazgul's 5. Why did I think it was 4? I think the goal is to get... as much as we can down before we start casting spells. I think I'll probably just leave the Refute up here. I thought Lord of Nazgul was 5. I thought it was 4, not 5, but that's okay. On turn 4, we'll get the Lord of Nazgul down. And then next turn, right, we can start slinging these spells. Hopefully we can get into a Nazgul here. So turn 5, we'll start with the Serum Visions. That's going to make us a Wraith. And that check is going to happen every time a Wraith gets created, but we get to draw a card and then scry 2. All right, well, there's one of our Nazgul. Remember, we got 9 of them in the list. The Witch King, I don't know that I need at the moment. I think I'm willing to bottom it, but that Nazgul we definitely want. So we've got 5 mana left this turn. See, I'm kind of thinking of Fanatical Offering to sack the Wraith. You see, we have some of this in here. To draw 2 and make a map. So we draw a Nazgul and a Consider, and we make a map token. So we've got 3 mana left. Then I would play the Nazgul. So Nazgul, when it comes in the Ring Temshu, we'll have Lord of Nazgul be our ring bearer, because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. We just don't want it to be a Nazgul, so we can use multiple of them. So we'll have it be our ring bearer. But then whenever the ring tempts us, we get to put a counter on each Wraith we control. So there you go, counters all around. And now, right, now we're looking to have this Nazgul, grow all of our Wraiths, right, over the course of the game. We didn't have a mana left over there for the map, but the map's a great way to start digging through for more things, right, and putting counters on creatures. The ring tempts us when it gets up to 2. Whenever it attacks, we draw and then discard. When it becomes 3, whenever it gets blocked by a creature, it dies at the end of combat. And then whenever it gets to 4, whenever it deals damage to a player, that player loses 3 life. So there's a lot of options on the ring bearer there. So here on turn 6, we have 7 mana. I like something like Season of Weaving. So it's another one of these season spells from Bloomburrow. 5 pause of the mode. We can draw. We can pay 2 to choose an artifact or creature. And make a copy of it. This feels like it'd be great for the Nazgul, right? To do that a couple times, and then 3 can bounce. My thought here would be make 2 copies of a Nazgul and draw a card. But let's see if there's anything else we want to do before we do that. If I do this, I would make a Wraith, which would go up to 4 creatures, draw a card. On cast, Season Weaving would make it 5 Wraiths, make 2 copies of the Nazgul would be 7 Wraiths, but I would get 2 more counters. So I'd still have some decent stuff. I'm just trying to think of what's the best way to make Wraiths this turn, but also, hurt our opponents. I'm thinking, so the Lord of Nazgul already has Leap, right? I'm thinking Leap on Nazgul to draw a card. I mean, that makes us a Wraith. And then 6 mana left, we draw Ripples, which isn't bad either as a way to protect the board. I guess there could be the argument, do we go Consider, hold up Refute, and Ripples of Potential just to make up more Wraiths? That would be 4, 5, 6, and then Season of Weaving on our next turn would actually get up to the 9 threshold, or do we do it now? I guess the logic in me says we do this, make a Wraith. We see Underground River. I think I'm willing to keep it on top, just so we have a land to play next turn. Then we have 5 mana up, plenty enough to Ripples, plenty enough to Planar Incision or Refute. We still have these ways to bounce things or protect our board. We could attack with Lord of the Nazgul this turn if we want to, but the point is, I think we should be able to get to our Wraith count next turn. Now, if we hit to the end step before our turn and no one's done anything, I think we just Planar Incision Nazgul, because that would end up with another Wraith. Nazgul would come back in. The ring would tempt us again. We get another on the ring, and then everybody gets a counter. That leaves us at 6. Weaving would be 7, 8, 9, and they would all be 9, 9s, right? That's my thought on the on that there. Now, if someone does try to do something, we ripples or refute, and although we don't blink the Nazgul, we still get the Wraith. We just wouldn't get the counter. You know what I mean? But I mean, if someone truly, otherwise, let's say that we just planar incisioned, blinked the Nazgul, it actually comes in with an extra counter, and do that. Now on our turn, I'm thinking land for turn, so that's 8. My thought here is just Season of Weaving. We don't really need to do anything special because we make a Wraith on cast, right? I'm now just realizing that it's on cast, isn't it? Okay, so we would miss the 9 trigger because it is on cast, but that's okay. We still make 2 copies of Nazgul and then draw a card, right? Still got 2 mana left. So I guess we could ripples, because then that would, or we could do something, try to do something else to activate it. The 2 Nazgul come in. We'll just have them both. They're both going to go off, making the ring tempt us. So now all of our Wraiths get 2 more counters. Nope, all of our Wraiths get 6 more counters because it is not. It is not whenever it says whenever the ring tempts you at all. So all 3 of these are going to put counters on. And now our opponents are in a rough shape. We've got a bunch of menacing attackers. We've got Lord of the Nazgul in the air. It's going to be a pretty brutal attack. And I think this is where this deck tries to find its end game, right? Is these boards where you just have a ton of Wraiths that our opponents have to deal with. Now we just leave the ripples up in case somebody tries to deal with our board. That was 6 mana, so we've got 2 mana left. Perfect attack. I mean, just take some massive attacks here. And then, we hold up ripples. If anyone tries to do anything, cast ripple, make the Wraith, proliferate. The only thing that wouldn't survive would be that 1 Wraith because it doesn't have a counter on it. And then just protect our entire board, untap, and, just go to town. I think that's a solid first playtest, although we're not, 100% sure what our opponents would do. Here, I got a 3-lander with the Commander Sphere needed to get to our 3rd color. There's the Weaving, there's the Shadow Rift, and a Nazgul. So we're not off to a bad start. Would have loved to have seen a Swamp off the top instead of that island. It's going to make this kind of awkward the first few turns, but go into the Commander Sphere there so we have access to our other color. I think we just, Lord of the Nazgul here on turn 4. We technically left up that Rapid Hybrid in case someone did anything early we were really worried about. But I think the truth is we're working our way up. 6 mana. Asinine Antics is interesting. Can make all of our opponent's creatures into 1/1s. So just a very interesting way to shut down potentially our opponent's things. But here I'm just thinking Nazgul. Make the Lord of the Nazgul our ring bearer. Put a counter on each of them. So that's 3. I've got 3 mana left. Maybe we Shadow Rift. Maybe we Shadow Rift Lord of the Nazgul to draw a card, is my thought. Just try to work our way through the deck a little bit. 2 mana left. I don't do anything too good. We just leave up the Rapid Hybrid, attack with the Lord of the Nazgul this turn. We are turn 6, 7 mana. I like the idea of see the double on Nazgul. That would be up to 4. That'd be 5 creatures. We could also Asinine Antics if we want to, if our opponents are getting too far ahead. But I kind of like the idea of just C double, making a copy of Nazgul. So we would get a Wraith and then the Nazgul. The Nazgul would have the ring tempt us. And when the ring tempts us, everything is going to get 2 counters because we have 2 Nazgul. Now we're getting to be in great shape, right? Our Nazgul are growing. Again, I think we're in good shape. We could hold up the Rapid Hybrid as a way to deal with something if we need to, which could get us another Wraith. Is there a world where we do that anyway if we're looking to Season of Weaving? No, I don't think it nets us any value to do it. I guess there's always the world where we could sack the Commander Sphere if we want to try to dig for another card. I don't mind the board state. I mean, Lord of Nazgul is getting to be tough. The Rapid doesn't really protect the board, but it at least might be able to deal with something pesky. My thought is, this is that. We could always Asinine Antics next turn, get another Wraith, and, shut our opponents down a little bit. But I think we kind of see what we draw. If there's any reason to use the Rapid, we do it. We just do it, get the Wraith. I think it just makes so much sense to do, just to get something out of the way. I mean, turn 6, I'm sure there was something that we could do here. 8 mana, not enough for the Weaving and the Antics. If I make 2 Nazgul, everything's getting 8 counters, so everything's just growing up mass. We could draw a card. We could draw 3 and then make 1 copy of Nazgul just to try to net ourselves into some more card advantage and still put 3 counters on all of our creatures, right? Let's try that. Let's make a Wraith, draw 3, and make 1 Nazgul. Again, the Nazgul comes in. Make everybody 3 counters because we have 3 Nazgul. And we're up to the next one on our ring tracker. And that was 6, so 2 mana. So we see the Predator's Hour, which might be able to do it next turn. We do have the 2 mana this turn, but most of our creatures have menace. I just don't see a world where this benefits us very much this turn, but maybe we do it to, if we can really, if the menace would mean we could take more people out, maybe we do it this turn. Otherwise, I think I would just wait till next turn to Antics plus Predator's Hour, maybe to make the blocks worse for our opponents, But I mean, if we do that though this turn, we can turn on them being 9/9s, right? Because we play this, we get a Wraith, everybody becomes 9/9s, and then they have menace, and whenever they do damage, we steal. You know what I mean? So there is the argument there, right, that you do that. I think that's a safe enough place to stop on that playtest. I think we've kind of seen where the deck's churning on that one. Here we're keeping a 4-laner with Nazgul, Witch King of Angmar, and the Ponder. And I'd love to try to wait to use Ponder if possible, but I feel like it may come a time where using the Ponder may actually help us get ahead instead of getting to turn 5 for the Nazgul, Lord Nazgul. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Look at the top 3. Put them back in any order, and you may shuffle and then draw. Well, I like the Splash Portal, and I like Nazgul, and I like Arcane Signet. I think these are all 3 really great cards. This is a way to blink the Nazgul. We have another Nazgul, and we have Arcane Signet. So I'm thinking Arcane Signet, and then Splash Portal, and then Nazgul. And then we get to draw the Arcane Signet. So then this turn, Arcane Signet, and we just take the turn off. Unfortunately, we can't play that Nazgul. But I think it's important to get the Arcane Signet down so that this turn, we Lord a Nazgul. Now we've got, Nazgul plus a bounce next turn. We also double Nazgul next turn if we want to, depending on how we see the board. Here on turn 5, we've got 6 mana. We see Irenicus this is a way to either copy Lord of Nazgul to get more Wraith tokens, or just copy the Nazgul, right? There's a lot of options. I think we do one. Well, if we're going to Nazgul, we do it after. Well, Splash Portal makes us another. I think either way, we Splash Portal, so that's a counter in each of them. Wraith on cast, blink the Nazgul. We're going to get tempted again. Again, I'm choosing Lord of the Nazgul. That comes in and puts a counter, right? So now the boards are growing. Lord of the Nazgul could take an attack this turn. I'm just trying to think of how do we most effectively grow all of our Wraiths at the same time. I mean, Wish Angmar feels like a nice attacker, right? Maybe we do that, or we could consider plus Nazgul. There's a lot of options here. We can consider plus Irenicus to make another Nazgul. Right, there's a couple of, that would actually get us 2, so we'd be what? Yeah, I don't mind that. So I'm kind of thinking Irenicus on the Nazgul. Get a Wraith uncast, then the Nazgul would come in. Everybody gets 2 counters. consider. Wraith, Surveil 1. We'll need to bump that. I think at this point we've got the lands we're going to need. Right now we're in good shape, right? Lots of Wraiths. We're pretty darn close. I think just card casting Nazguls at this point might even be enough, right? Just think about it. The first Nazgul's 3, the next Nazgul's 4. I mean, there's a lot of that. We also have the Ghostly Flicker, so we could play a Nazgul and Ghostly Flick the two Nazgul, right? This is where this deck I think just ramps off, like to the point that it would just become 9-numbing what you could do at this point and what you'd want to do with it. But I'd love to know what you think of Lord of the Nazgul down in the comment section below. Let me think, am I crazy? Does the deck look fun to you? Do you like the idea of the Nazguls? Do you hate the Nazguls? I'd love to chat with you, and I will catch you guys next time.